You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies for Medicaid,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
While Bernie wrote the bill, I read the bill.
Let's be clear. I've actually never met anybody who likes their health insurance company.
For a socialist, you got a lot more confidence in corporate America than I do.
Now, I am Asian, so I know a lot of doctors. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47.
Hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
I remember President Trump scoffed and said he'd like to see me making a deal with Xi Jinping. I'd like to see him making a deal with Xi Jinping.
We must and will defeat Trump, the most dangerous president in the history of this country.
And now, President Trump, you can go back to watching Fox News.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Friday the 13th. Are you feeling unlucky?
No, I'm not. Okay. Some of the candidates last night were definitely unlucky. I mean, it was
an incredible night. A lot happened.
And a lot of planned quotes,
planned lines.
Of planned lines. But I gotta say, of the best of the lines, I gotta say the Mayor Pete line, saying, I'd like to see Donald Trump make a deal with Beijing.
That was not planned. That's why it was so good.
Very good.
Along with Joe, Willie, and me, we have White House reporter for the Associated Press, Jonathan Lemire, senior advisor at MoveOn.org, and an MSNBC contributor, Karine Jean-Pierre, professor at Princeton University, Eddie Glaude Jr., former Treasury official and Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ratner, and White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour, Yamiche Alcindor. What a night, Joe.
What a night. So, Willie, what was your takeaway?
Well, the big takeaway is that vinyl's back. I think we all knew that. Get it on the record player and hit that. That was from the vice president. But also that the very beginning of the debate, Vice President Biden came out and really set that line in the sand of what we've been talking about for the last couple of months since that first debate, which is on this question of health care. He says Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders' plans go too far. This progressive dream of Medicare for all, eliminating private insurance, is a fantasy. I want to build on the legacy of Barack Obama and make the Affordable Care Act better. He set that distinction very clearly from the beginning. And on the stage, by the way, for the first time in a debate with the two of them.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of incredible moments, Joe, including, well, I think a real low blow. I'm going to have to say it was Matt Gaetz level. Castro versus Biden, and Castro really went after the former vice president, the former housing secretary, took him on over health care, and Castro essentially implied that Biden is senile.
The difference between what I support and what you support, Vice President Biden, is that you require them to opt in, and I would not require them to opt in. They would automatically be enrolled. They wouldn't have to buy in. That's a big difference because Barack Obama's vision was not to leave 10 million people uncovered. He wanted every single person in this country covered. My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If she qualifies for Medicaid,
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago? Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago? I mean, I can't believe that you said 2 minutes ago that they had to buy in, and now you're saying they don't have to buy. You're forgetting that.
I said anyone like your grandmother who has no money.
We need a healthcare system.
You're automatically
enrolls people regardless of whether they choose to opt in or not. If you lose your job, for instance, his healthcare plan would not automatically enroll you. You would have to opt in. My healthcare plan would. That's a big difference. I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama, and you're not.
I'll be surprised at him.
There were so many things wrong with that, Joe. Rookie, low blow, obviously so obsessed with Joe Biden that he was going after Biden, being proud of working in the Obama administration, but then not taking responsibility for what went wrong. I think Julian Castro worked in the Obama administration as well. Maybe he forgot. The problem with Castro's swipe, as the Daily Beast's Sam Stein and NBC's Mike Memoli point out, Biden actually said the opposite.
My health care plan does significantly cut the cost of it. The largest out-of-pocket payment you'll pay is $1,000. You'll be able to get into anyone who can't afford it gets automatically enrolled in the Medicare type option we have.
So there's just so many things wrong with what Julian Castro said. And Mika, I want to go back to what you had just said before. If Julian Castro was so offended by Barack Obama's position on health care, which he is obviously.
Yeah, very obsessed
extraordinarily offended by Barack Obama's positions on health care. And if he was so extraordinarily offended by Barack Obama's positions on immigration, he was in the administration. Why didn't he resign in protest? I mean, this is, Willie, it is hard to imagine how Julian Castro could have looked much worse last night. First of all, of course, the obvious low blow, the cheap shot, the ageism, saying you don't even remember what you said. But then the problem is that he got that wrong. Maybe he has hardening of the arteries at, what, 40 whatever, however old he is. That's what we used to call it in '07, hardening of the arteries. But it's outrageous because Biden specifically said what he said. And Castro, I counted 4, maybe 5 times. I'm going, did you forget what you said?
I can't believe
just
it.
said. Did you forget what you said? No. It was Castro who was wrong. It was Castro hurling out the insults on Barack Obama. It was Castro who forgot that he actually served in the Obama administration. And it was Castro who got it wrong and threw the insult, the ageism insult, at Joe Biden.
If you're going to have your big moment on a big stage like that, you better get your facts right. And Julian Castro just didn't have his facts right on that question. The idea, too, Eddie, that he's presenting himself as the inheritant of the legacy of Barack Obama and not Joe Biden, of whom Barack Obama said the best decision I ever made was making Joe Biden my vice president, is preposterous on its face. And then, frankly, to go on TV afterward in interviews, Julian Castro, and say, whoa, 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 I wasn't talking about his age. Quite clearly, that was the point of that attack, was to underline for the viewers that Joe Biden is 76 years old.
Right. I think David Axelrod captured it really well in a tweet right after he did it, that he threw the long pass and he overthrew it by a long shot. It seems to me that it was a calculated risk. It didn't work. I think it's going to hurt him. I think it's important that candidates like Castro and others, they can differentiate themselves from Obama. They can do that in a way without having to hurl insults or undermine Obama's legacy. But they can say, I think Elizabeth Warren gave an indication of how to do it. Obama set the stage. We can build on what he has done. And I think if we can go that route, we'll be in a better position. But I don't think you can go the route that Castro tried to go.
You know, Steve, this is the second Democratic debate in a row where Joe Biden seemed to survive on the excesses of his opponents. He was at times shaky last night, but in the second debate, he survived and actually probably ended up gaining politically because everybody decided they were going to attack Barack Obama in the second debate. The third debate was a love fest. They overcorrected. Everybody was talking about how much they love Barack Obama. That was awesome. But then Castro attacks Biden on his age once again, puts him in a good position, makes him a sympathetic figure, and helps him win that skirmish.
Yeah, I think Biden, all things considered, had a pretty good night. He did what he had to do. Was it electrifying? Or maybe not, but I think he sort of stayed calm. He stayed on message. He got it done. He got some good support from Amy Klobuchar, in particular on the health care issue, where he wasn't left out all alone to try to argue against Medicare for all that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders were proposing. And, you know, he had some tricky questions. He was asked in previous debates about the deportations under Obama, and it is what it is, and he got through that reasonably well. I think what was missing from the debate a bit was, first of all, I continue to be surprised that no moderator has tried to identify the differences between Sanders and Warren. It would seem to me to be a simple question to say to Elizabeth Warren, what do you disagree with Bernie Sanders about, or vice versa? Yeah. And so they kind of got a little bit of a free pass there. And I think also the debate, the first third of the debate on health care obviously got way into the weeds, very specific, and we can talk about all that. But a lot of the rest of the debate was more motherhood and apple pie, in the sense there were issues that these folks pretty much all agreed on and wanted to go after Trump and did go after Trump, and made some progress perhaps toward the general election. But I think all in all, I'm not sure the debate really identified some of the very fundamental differences among these candidates besides health care, like Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax proposal, like whether the deficit matters anymore, all kinds of areas where I think there was substantial agreement. We didn't really get to those last night.
Still ahead on Morning Joe, aside from Oprah, no one gives things away quite like Andrew Yang. The presidential candidate triples down on his freedom dividends last night, and Mayor Pete doesn't know what to say about it. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
$1,000 a month for an entire year to 10 American families. Someone watching this at home right now.
Pete Buttigieg.
It's original, I'll give you that.
Oh my gosh, Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang using his opening statement to announce the surprise that he had been teasing. It's part of the pilot program for his universal basic income plan, which would give every citizen over the age of 18 $1,000 a month. Yang is already testing the program with 2 families using money from his own pocket. This next phase, however, is coming from campaign donations. MSNBC contributor Noah Rothman is among those reacting. He tweeted, quote, "Literally giving away other people's money is what a Republican parody of a Democratic nominating contest would look like." It was incredible. It's kind of a gimmick, really.
Kind of a gimmick. Kind of a gimmick. That's like saying Pet Rocks was kind of a phase. Yes, it was a gimmick. And I'm not so sure why he did that. Didn't help himself last night at all. He picked up enough momentum to at least be on the stage. He has a group of people who intensely follow him. And again, why put that gimmick out there?
Yeah, Andrew Yang walking out on the debate stage and just making it rain for some people, peeling off bills. As long as it was coming out of his own pocket, I think everybody was okay with it. But when you start using taxpayer money for it, it's a different situation. You know, he's an interesting guy. He's an entrepreneur. We showed that head-to-head earlier this week where he's actually beating Donald Trump among a couple of other candidates doing that. So, yes, of course, it's a gimmick and a way for him to get a little extra attention for a guy who's had trouble in this crowded field getting that attention. Just a little of that.
Yeah, so wow. Steve Ratner, let me ask you about the contributor class of the Democratic Party and Joe Biden. It seems to me that many people believe that donors that have helped fund the Democratic Party over the past few decades believe that they're either going to have Joe Biden now or Elizabeth Warren. That's what I hear. Of course, we still have 5 months to go, so we could all be shocked. Remember, in 2008, at this point, Rudy Giuliani and Hillary Clinton were well ahead in the first place. So anything can change. But how did Joe Biden do last night? What are your friends telling you?
I think the general consensus was he did well enough, that he didn't knock the cover off the ball and present some whole new Joe Biden that got everybody completely comfortable about the issues that we've all been talking about him. But I think he did well enough. I think he played the game pretty well. I think he was fortunate in that everyone else was trying to cloak themselves in President Obama the way he did, and so there was a bit less of them all piling on Biden as the front runner, which worked to his advantage. And I think he did make some of the mistakes that Jonathan spoke about in the last block, but I think there was a sigh of relief in the Biden world and the Biden supporters that he did well enough in this to soldier on. And while I think Warren had quite a good night, I don't think she had the chance to get into a lot of the other issues that she's talked about, like a wealth tax, and expose those differences which really need to be exposed. And as I think many people observed, I think Bernie Sanders did not seem on his game at all last night. There was one tweet from somebody saying he was the relative you didn't want to be seated next to at Passover, angry old man. And so I think when you put all that together, I think it was a good night for Biden, and I think that's what the
And how are Democratic donors, Wall Street donors, how are they coming to terms with the fact that they may be given a choice between Elizabeth Warren and Donald Trump come 2020?
They're going through the 5 stages of grief on that one. There is an enormous nervousness about the idea of Elizabeth Warren against Donald Trump. But let's be really clear. There are two sets of issues around that. One set of issues around that are her policies, which people that I know, Democratic activists for the most part, do not favor. The numbers don't add up. The ideas are well beyond our means, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole question of what she actually believes. But even if you get past that, there's the more fundamental question of whether she can beat Donald Trump. And you said in the earlier block, Joe, we were talking about health insurance, and you said, well, everybody's for universal health care. I think there is a kind of a litmus test or a divide between the Democrats who are for Medicare for all, take away your private insurance, and the Democrats who are for universal health care, but we're not taking away your private insurance. And I think if we Democrats, my team, runs a candidate who says, I'm for Medicare for all, and we're going to take away your private insurance, I think that is a disastrous political road to go down. So there are two sets of questions around Elizabeth Warren. One, what would she actually do if she got there? And two, can she be elected?
Coming up, two of the presidential candidates we saw on last night's debate stage, Senators Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, join the conversation. Just ahead on Morning Joe.
Who isn't a racist, it's who is and isn't doing something about racism. And this is not just an issue that started yesterday. It's not just an issue that we hear a president that can't condemn white supremacy. We have systemic racism that is eroding our nation from healthcare to the criminal justice system. And it's nice to go all the way back to slavery, but dear God, we have a criminal justice system that is so racially biased. We have more African Americans under criminal supervision today than all the slaves in 1850. We have to come at this issue attacking systemic racism, having the courage to call it out, and having a plan to do something about it.
One of Senator Cory Booker's moments on the debate stage last night, and Senator Booker of New Jersey joins us now. Welcome back to the show. Good to have you on. Jonathan Lemire has the first question for you. Jonathan?
Senator, good to see you. One of the moments last night that has been most discussed today was Julian Castro challenging Vice President Biden about his forgetfulness with an answer. Now, it turned out Castro didn't have the facts right, but afterwards in the debate, you told CNN that, and I quote you, I think that we're at a tough point right now because I think a lot of people are concerned about Joe Biden's ability to carry the ball across the end line without fumbling. So my question to you, sir, is do you believe the former vice president has the stamina and the ability, both physical and mental, to withstand the rigors of this campaign and be president?
I don't know, and I think that's something voters are going to have to decide on for themselves. If I felt he was the best person for the job, I wouldn't be on the debate stage. I wouldn't be in this campaign. I believe that whoever our nominee is going to have to be someone not just to be able to get into the across the end line, but this is a moment in America where we really need a candidate who can just more than beat Donald Trump. And I know that's the #1 thing voters want. But to me, beating Donald Trump is a floor. It's not the ceiling. We need someone who can energize and ignite this nation, unify this country, bring us together. And that's why I'm running. I'm running because I believe #1 can unify the Democratic Party, but even more than that, can hopefully unify this country back to a sense of common cause and common purpose.
Senator, let me press you on that. Obviously, you think you're the best candidate to be president. You have differences with Vice President Biden. I'm sure you do with Senator Warren and Senator Sanders and all the rest too. But that's not what this quote says. Let me ask you again. Does the former vice president have the ability and the energy and the tenacity, mentally and physically, to be president of the United States?
And again, I want to say that's really up for us, all of us as voters, to decide. I am in this race because I know I have the energy and ability to do it and to take on tough fights. As you know, as I said last night, there's an Oscar-nominated documentary about me taking on perhaps one of the toughest political machines in America and overcoming that. This is one of those moments where, as we've seen in the past, you know, the people who are leading in the polls this far out have, and from our party since my entire lifetime, have never gone on to win the presidency. The people that do are more movement leaders, from Obama to Bill Clinton, people that energize a moment in America and help us, not in a partisan way, but help us in a national way overcome the lines that divide us and aspire to what ties us together as a people. That's my message in this campaign. That's the case I'm making and why I'm running so hard.
So, Senator, congratulations on another good debate performance last night. I wanted to read a quote from last night that I thought was I think a lot of people in the middle would think was actually positive coming from the debate stage. You talk about how Democrats have been missing it. You say there's a point we're really missing on stage right now, which is the fact that Donald Trump's America First policy is actually an America isolated, an America alone policy. And then you talk about trade and other strategic alliances. But Donald Trump has engaged in trade wars. He set up tariff taxes that working class Americans disproportionately pay. He's blown up a lot of our trading alliances with the assumption that people have to come back to us. They don't. As EU leaders said a couple of days ago, you know what? If Donald Trump wants to engage in trade wars, we're just going to start dealing with China. Does the Democratic Party, or I'll just say you can't speak for the whole party, but are you going to stake out a position going through this campaign that's closer to Barack Obama's position, Bill Clinton's position, a lot of mainstream Democrats' position on free trade, on fair trade, on opening America up to the world again after a period of isolation, trade wars, and tariffs that Donald Trump has really damaged the international company pushing forward?
Yeah, look, I have been, first of all, you know this, when you run for president, as much as I thought I knew this country, it's been what an enriching experience it has been. And one of the things that's affirming to my mission in this campaign is talking to people, basically Republicans and Democrats, people in rural areas and urban areas, to see how much commonality we have. And so when I meet people like Gary and Carolyn in Iowa, who are just salt-of-the-earth farmers who complain to me about how Donald Trump is really ruining so many farmers in this country, from farmers to factory workers to even people, consumers in my community, his policies are really disastrous. And this is not a partisan thing, and you know this because I have these conversations in Senate hallways or in the Senate gym or in private conversations with Republicans who there's a lot more agreement on these issues than disagreement. So I'm absolutely a believer that America can compete and win. In fact, we have to. We're a consumer-based economy, and the overwhelming majority of consumers are outside of our country. We've got to get out there and compete, and we've got to create a world where our number one competitor, China, where we're unifying democratic free market people against this country that is violating international norms and taking on practices that frankly are undermining the ideals of free trade. As long as we keep labor and the environment at the center of what we're doing and use our markets to leverage global change around these issues, I want to see us out there competing. And I know that this guy, I don't care what your party is, he is setting us back in so many ways when it comes to trade and our standing strong with other countries.
So you're a supporter of free trade?
I have always been a supporter of free trade, but again, I just want to say we have made mistakes in the past when it comes to labor and labor rights in this country. We could have done a much better job, and you know this from dealing with the kind of adjustments, the difficult adjustments to a globalized world that we should be doing. I've been saying for a long time, I watch what countries from Switzerland to Germany have been doing in terms of apprenticeship programs, preparing people for the job dislocations in 21st century sort of job market. You see those countries have incredible programs for people mid-career who can shift over to apprenticeship training programs and get ready for the next job. We in America have to be ready to compete globally and have to keep labor and the kind of insecurity that comes when you lose your job and have a country that gives you no pathway to prosperity. We also have to make sure that we're getting more people to shift to our labor terms and really focusing on environmental concerns. I think we can do all of that. I think this isn't a tyranny of the or, it's a liberation of the and.
Good morning, Corey. It's Claire. How are you today? It's Claire. I want to ask you.
Hi, Claire. How are you?
I'm good. I wanted to get that smile out of you before I continued. You know, one of the biggest challenges you have is the allure of fighting for an ideal, which can be inspirational, on the altar of purity. This is really hard, what you're trying to do. You are trying to inspire people around the idea of incremental progress as opposed to fighting for an ideal that you and I both know is not going to happen. Speak to how you can inspire without making a promise that you know is not realistic.
You know, and that is often my frustration as a guy who actually had to run something. I ran a major American city, the biggest one in my state, and I always had to have that balance. Big, bold visions of where we can be because I needed to inspire people, but I had to deliver progress right away, and I think you can do both. Look, I hear things on the debate stage sometimes that make me think, okay, where's the realism in that? Where's the pragmatism in that? And that's why I think I'm really good at this and will be a good chief executive, because I will be fiercely fighting for that pragmatic a solution of bringing people together, unifying our party and this nation to get real things done. But I am a visionary, and I think that that's important to inspire folks. But you got to level with voters about how we actually get to that ideal, and that's the line I'm trying to walk in this election, and try to keep us. Really, what inspired me about our country is that we had presidents that told us we could go to the moon, or great leaders that told us we can go to the mountaintop, but they still understood vulnerable communities that needed help right now, and we're focused on delivering those results.
Senator Booker, this is Eddie Glaude. I wanted to ask a question about the way in which you responded to racism and gun control. Gun reform, right? You said that you were sorry that people had to wait to address this issue when it affected their communities. And you spoke to the particular violence in your community in Newark, where you live. And then you also added to that, you offered this kind of broad view that we can't just simply understand racism as just simply intentional prejudice, but we need to understand its relationship to environmental racism and the like. Talk a little bit about what you were trying to do on the stage last night in making that sort of move, to ask your fellow candidates to think more broadly and in a bigger way about the question of racism and these particular issues that we face in the country.
Yeah, I think we have a problem when we're at our worst. It's an impotency of empathy. When we're at our best, it's a more courageous empathy. And we often don't see a problem until it happens to us. I've literally heard leaders on the Senate floor saying, oh, well, I'm now in favor of gay marriage because I have a gay child. You know, come on. When you have a nation where 30% of gay children admit to missing school because of fear, what is wrong with your empathy that you cannot let that issue motivate you before you have it affect you directly in your life? And so when it comes to issues of race and racism, this isn't about charity. It's not just about black folks. We are hurting as an overall society. Our economy is hurting. Our national well-being is hurting because we can't take that step of empathy and understand that, as King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so it's hard for a guy that's lived now decades in an inner city and sees up close and personal environmental racism, the criminal justice system, and how literally I've seen lives and families destroyed for a marijuana charge. Literally, right now as we're having this conversation, there are kids, disproportionately black and brown kids, in jail for doing things that 2 of the last 3 presidents admitted to doing. These things are hurting our country, and what I'm going to be working in my entire career, no matter what title I hold, is to call our country to that more courageous empathy where we don't have to wait for something to visit upon our family or our neighborhood to understand that we are in this together, that we share one destiny, and we have to rise up to a revival of civic grace and empathy to really solve problems, but more importantly, to seize the opportunities that exist when we raise everyone up.
Yeah.
Senator Cory Booker, thank you very much. Great to have you on. And as we go to break, a snapshot from behind the scenes from one of our booking producers, Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, sharing a quick conversation just a few moments ago. The California Democrat is standing by, and she will join the discussion next on Morning Joe.
Candidate Senator Kamala Harris of California. Senator, good morning. It's always good to see you. We all sat together. You visited us in a restaurant in Miami after that first debate where there was some confusion about your position on health care. You clarified that you misunderstood the question that night from Lester Holt. So let's just, for a lot of people watching, particularly on this network, who may be seriously considering voting for you, just where you come down on the spectrum, sort of from the Elizabeth Warren Medicare for All corner of the party to sort of Joe Biden's more moderate idea of improving the Affordable Care Act. Where do you put yourself on that spectrum?
I appreciate the question, so thank you for that. I've always been for Medicare for all, but Bernie's plan is a good plan. I support it, but I thought we could do better. So I came up with my own Medicare for all plan, and it's pretty basic. We're going to bring down costs. Everyone will be covered, including people with pre-existing conditions. But we are also going to give people choice, because Willie, I've been hearing from people, and people have said resoundingly, wherever they live, whatever their race, and frankly, whatever their political party, they don't want choice to be taken from them. So my plan offers that people can have either a public Medicare for all plan or a private Medicare for all plan. And then we also have the ability for people to have a longer transition period, because I've talked to our friends in labor, many of whom negotiated lower wages for better benefits with their health care plan, and I didn't want them to have to give that up. So that's the difference. And, you know, in terms of this distinction between my plan and the Vice President's plan, my plan would cover everyone, and by the Vice President's plan, its own description, 10 million people would not be covered under that plan.
One of the fears I think a lot of voters have is they hear that headline, and Senator Klobuchar, your colleague, made it again last night, made this point that 149 people under the Medicare for all proposed, not by you, but by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, 149 million Americans would lose their private insurance. Can you say to those 149 million Americans this morning, you can keep that private insurance under my plan?
Well, what they will have is that private insurers have the ability to compete in my plan, and the individual is going to have choice, and they're going to have the ability to make the choice about whether they want to go with a private insurer or a public insurer, and that's exactly what people want. They want to have that kind of choice, and I want to give it to them.
But there is a chance if I have private insurance and I enjoy my private insurance, it could be taken from me?
Well, your insurer is going to have to compete. But here's the thing, Willie. What's going to happen also under my plan is your private insurer is no longer going to be able to charge you copays and deductibles. People in America right now are paying anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 deductible for their insurance. They don't want to do that. What they want is they want to keep their doctor. They want to know that their employer is not dictating, and that their insurance company is not dictating the kind of coverage that they receive, the kind of tests they can have. And under my plan, we're going to really put a stop to that, but we're also going to get rid of copays and deductibles. Your private insurer, if they have the ability to compete, they will be in the plan, and you can choose to go with them. But I think what you really want is you want your doctor. You want to know that when your doctor wants you to have certain tests, that the insurer is not going to tell you you can't have them, and that's what my plan will offer.
Hi there, Senator. It's Karine Jean-Pierre. I saw that you had tweeted last night that in a 3-hour debate, ABC missed an opportunity to talk about women's issues. Can you be more specific about that, what you were wishing that you were able to discuss on that stage last night?
I mean, there's so much, Karine. There's everything from choice, which, you know, listen, I've been traveling our country. Yet again, women's access to reproductive health care is under full attack in so many states in our country. You look at a state like Alabama, where that legislature has passed a law that would criminalize and incarcerate a physician for assisting with a woman's exercise of choice. And that discussion needed to happen. When I talk to women across this country, and again, regardless of where they live, regardless of their age, their race, it is a huge issue, and women are concerned because women rightly know that with these restrictions on their access to reproductive health care, you know, there are women who will die, and in particular poor women and women of color. It's a very real issue. It should have been brought up last night. It wasn't. I'm glad we're talking about it now, and I intend to continue to talk about it. And then there's a variety of other issues. I have a plan, for example, to address the issue of equal pay. In 1963, our country passed legislation recognizing that women were not being paid equal to men for the same work. So we passed legislation saying everyone should be paid the same amount for the same work. Fast forward to the year of our Lord 2019, women are paid 80 cents on the dollar. Black women, 61 cents on the dollar. Native American women, 58 cents, and Latinas, 53 cents. I have a plan that says we're going to change that. We're going to put the onus on corporations to pay people the same amount, or they'll be fined.
Senator, I want to ask you about guns. You, along with a number of the other candidates, but you especially did a great job last night really talking about the impact of gun violence, what you've seen firsthand. I would venture to say that Americans are with you on this. The polls show they want change. The issue is getting it done in Washington and getting Republicans who don't seem to see what Americans want. How are you going to be able to impact change on this issue differently? Because it hasn't been able to happen. I mean, Barack Obama struggled with this, and we couldn't get the change that apparently Americans are looking for. How will you do it differently?
No, you're right, Mika, and that's why I have said, and I'm fully prepared after being elected, to give the United States Congress 100 days to pull their act together on this and put a bill on my desk for signature. And if they do not, I am prepared to take executive action and do 3 things. 1, put in place a comprehensive background check requirement. 2, put resources into the ATF to take the licenses of gun dealers who violate the law. And you should know, 90% of the guns associated with crime are sold by just 5% of the dealers. So we need to just enforce our laws and take their licenses. And then 3, by executive action, I'm prepared to put a ban on the importation of assault weapons into our country. Because to your point, the failure here is not the failure of good ideas. There are a lot of good ideas. My friends on the debate stage have a lot of great ideas, which I support. The failure is action and the failure of courage. And so if Congress doesn't act, I'm prepared to take executive action, because every day in America, during the course of that debate last night, 8 people, statistically, would have died from gun violence. So it's a very serious matter. It is affecting people in real time every day, and we need to take action.
All right, Senator Kamala Harris, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks,
we
Joe.
greatly appreciate
Thank you
it.
all.
You know, Willie, if Kamala Harris had given that answer a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have talked about the constitutional problems with it. But this is exactly what conservatives warned about when Donald Trump declared an emergency because he couldn't get what he wanted through the United States Congress on an issue involving far less deaths than guns. The next Democratic president is going to be able to declare an emergency just like Donald Trump, whether it's on guns, whether it's on abortions, whatever it is on, because Donald Trump did that over an issue that, again, was responsible for far less deaths than, let's say, guns.
And use it as a point of leverage in a negotiation, really, as well. And we saw, Claire, last night, Joe Biden pushing back on this idea of executive action, despite the fact President Obama used some of it himself, saying, we do have a constitution, guys. You still have to work with Congress. I know it looks ugly and it looks impossible. You can't get anything through the Senate. But he was sort of the lone voice on stage saying, we don't want to be like Donald Trump and just use executive action and get the things done we want to do. We still have to respect the Constitution.
Well, and that's really the issue. Is there anybody left in Washington that is going to respect the founding framers of our Constitution? You know, it's a check and balance. We all learn about it as we grow up. And there is a reason that we have so much compromise required in our country. It's because of our Constitution. But right now, both parties are kind of going all in. Well, if we can't do it the way the Constitution says we have to do it, we'll just do it anyway. And that is such a slippery slope. Donald Trump is by and large responsible. Barack Obama did executive orders and the Republicans went crazy. But now this guy has gone to a whole new place on matters of appropriation, which is absolutely embraced in the Constitution as requiring congressional action. So I do think this is dangerous for us to now all of a sudden willy-nilly say, we don't need Congress for anything. We just have a dictator.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. Still ahead, quote, I want more focus on Trump in this debate. That was the take last night from Ed Luce of the Financial Times.